Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that I know is on a lot of people's minds, um,
Oh, yeah.
AI and child development.
Absolutely.
And to help us with this deep dive, we're looking at some really fascinating research from ResearchGate
Yeah, some great stuff.
that takes a look at all of the different ways that AI is influencing how kids are growing up in this increasingly digital age.
Yeah.
So get ready because we're about to go deep on this one.
This paper really jumps out at you just how fast
Right.
AI is becoming, part of kids' lives these days.
It's everywhere,
It really is. It's not just about like how much time they're spending on screens anymore.
right?
AI is like built into their toys, their
Yeah.
educational apps,
Right.
even some healthcare stuff. It's really changing how they learn, how they play, how they even just talk to each other.
So we're talking about a much bigger impact than just that old screen time debate.
Way bigger. And the paper actually makes this point that we need people from all sorts of fields to figure this out.
Oh, interesting.
We need the AI experts, obviously, but we also need child development specialists
Right.
and people who make policies, all working together to understand what's going on.
It's a much bigger conversation.
Much bigger.
The research also gets into this idea of sensitive periods
Ah,
in a child's brain development. Can you maybe break that down for our listeners who may not be familiar with that?
So think of it like this. There are these windows of time when a kid's brain is like primed
Yeah.
to learn specific things, like how to talk, for example.
Right, right.
During these periods, their brains are like super adaptable, making tons of connections. And AI, it can either help or hurt that process, depending on how it's used.
That's interesting. So how does AI actually kind of play into those periods?
Well, on the good side, you can imagine AI tools being designed to really help kids learn during those prime times, right?
Hey,
So maybe you have an app that helps them learn language. It takes advantage of that time when their brains are just soaking everything
kind
up.
of little sponges.
Exactly. But on the other hand, too much screen time could mean they're missing out on other stuff,
Oh, right.
like playing with other kids,
Mhm.
exploring the real world, or even just having conversations face to face. That's crucial for their development.
It's all about balance, it sounds like.
Balance is key. And the paper actually, it digs into this difference between just passively watching a screen.
Like TV.
Yeah, like zoning out in front of the TV
Right.
and being actively engaged with something,
Oh, I see.
like playing a game.
That makes sense.
And this is where AI gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about, say, an AI-powered game that's designed well,
Yeah.
it can be a really amazing learning tool.
So we're not just talking about mindless entertainment here.
No, not at all. AI can actually make these games that are like personalized.
Yeah.
They adjust to how the kid is learning, how fast they're going.
Oh, wow.
It keeps them challenged and engaged. Really powerful stuff.
That is really cool.
But there's a catch. The paper is it's cautious about this thing called overgamification.
Oh, I've heard that term.
If we turn every single thing into a game, we could end up messing with kids' natural motivation.
Yeah, you don't want them to only do something if they're going to get a digital reward or points or something.
Right. They need to learn to enjoy learning for its own sake.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because this all kind of ties into something else the paper talks about,
Okay.
this video deficit effect.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Basically, it means that, especially for the little ones,
Like toddlers and babies.
yeah, really young kids, they just don't learn as well from screens as they do from real life interactions.
So even the best educational videos online, they can't really replace a parent reading a book with their child and talking about it.
That's it. They need those social cues, the back and forth with the
To really get it.
Yeah, to truly understand. So now the challenge for people who make AI is how do we design these experiences that actually help bridge that gap? How do we use AI to actually support real learning, not just replace it?
That's a great question. And the paper also gets into AI in education, which I know is a hot topic these days.
It is, and for good reason. AI has this huge potential to make learning more personal.
Yeah.
Give each kid the instruction they need, the feedback they need, right when they need it.
It sounds like it could solve so many problems that traditional classrooms have.
It really could. Imagine every student having their own virtual tutor, adjusting to how they learn best. It's pretty amazing to think about.
It is, but I imagine there are downsides too, right?
Of course. The paper doesn't shy away from that. It points out that a lot of the educational apps and platforms out there, they're more focused on just keeping kids engaged,
Interesting.
not necessarily on whether they're actually learning.
So it's easy to make something that looks flashy and keeps kids clicking and tapping. But that doesn't mean they're actually getting anything out of it.
Exactly. So they emphasize how important it is to really evaluate these educational technology tools
Yeah.
to make sure they're actually doing what they claim to do.
So parents and teachers need to be careful consumers.
Absolutely. And that brings up a question for you, for our listeners. How can we make sure that AI in education is actually beneficial? What are the things we should be looking for when we're evaluating these tools?
It's definitely something to think about. And what about all these AI agents that are popping up everywhere? Like chatbots and virtual assistants, even AI-powered toys. The paper talks about those too, right?
They do, yeah.
What are some of the concerns about kids interacting with those?
One big concern is attachment.
What do you mean?
Well, especially with younger kids, there's this possibility that they might develop like a really strong emotional bond with these AI companions.
Like those little robots kids can talk to.
Exactly. But then what happens if the AI breaks, or the company that made it just like stop supporting it?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
It could be really tough for a kid who's like formed this connection with this AI friend.
So like a digital version of losing a pet, but maybe even more confusing for a kid who doesn't really understand the difference between a robot and a real person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It really shows us that we have to think carefully about what it means for kids to form these kinds of relationships with AI.
It makes you wonder, what are the long-term effects?
Yeah, what are the long-term effects?
And on top of that, there's the whole issue of data privacy and protection.
Oh, absolutely.
Kids are growing up in a world where their data is constantly being collected and analyzed.
And the thing is, their understanding of privacy, it's still developing, right? They might not really get what it means to share their information online or what companies could do with their data.
And the paper really pushes for strong protections.
Absolutely. It's got to be a priority.
To keep kids' data safe from misuse and to make sure they're not exposed to harmful content online.
Exactly. We have to be proactive about this.
Because it often feels like the
It's
technology,
moving so fast.
it's moving so much faster than the regulations and the ethical discussions around it.
It's really a challenge. And the paper actually, it calls for international collaboration to deal with this.
Oh, wow.
Like experts from all over the world need to come together, share what they know, and figure out the best ways to regulate AI as it keeps evolving.
So it's not just about waiting for governments to catch up. It's about taking a more global and proactive approach.
Exactly. And it's not just on policymakers and tech companies either.
Right.
Parents, teachers, researchers, even kids themselves. They all have a role to play in figuring out what the future of AI looks like.
It sounds like this paper is really a call to action, urging all of us to be part of this conversation about how AI is going to impact the next generation.
It really is. Technology, like any tool, can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us to decide which way it goes.
And that's such a powerful reminder for all of us, I think,
I think so too.
that we have a say in this. We have a choice in how we shape the future of AI and how it's going to impact our world. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be diving into some of the specific recommendations from this research and talking about what steps we can take to ensure AI is a positive force in the lives of children. Stay tuned.
So, we've been talking about some of the challenges here.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
But the good news is this research paper, it doesn't just point out problems.
Right.
It actually offers some ways forward, some recommendations.
Okay, that's good to hear. What are some of those suggestions?
Well, one of the big ones is we need more research,
Makes sense.
specifically on the long-term effects of AI on kids.
Right, because we need to actually understand what's happening before we can make informed decisions.
Exactly. And it can't just be one type of research either.
What do you mean?
It can't just be computer scientists or just psychologists,
Yeah.
We need people who study child development working with people who build AI. We need teachers talking to the developers who are making these educational apps.
So a lot of collaboration is needed.
Tons of it. It's the only way we're going to come up with solutions that are both smart and responsible.
It's like we all have a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And the paper also talks about needing specific regulations.
For AI.
Yeah, regulations designed just for AI that kids use.
Interesting.
Like laws and guidelines that actually take into account how kids are different, how they're more vulnerable.
So what would that look like, those child-centered regulations?
Well, imagine rules that say Like educational tech companies,
Yeah.
they have to be upfront about how their algorithms actually work
Right.
and what they're doing with kids' data.
Makes sense.
Or maybe there are guidelines about how much time kids can spend with these AI agents,
Oh, interesting.
making sure they still get plenty of real-world play and social interaction.
So finding that balance again.
Always about balance. And this
Mhm.
is where parents and educators, they become so important.
Right, because they're the ones who are kind of on the front lines. Sure.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of parents and teachers, they feel overwhelmed by all this new technology.
I can imagine.
It's understandable, but the first thing is don't freak out.
Okay, good advice.
You don't have to become an AI expert overnight.
Right.
The important thing is to start learning.
Okay, but where do you even begin?
There are tons of resources out there online at the library,
Yeah.
that can give you the basics of AI, like what it is, what it can do, what the risks are.
Any specific recommendations?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For parents, Common Sense Media, they have great stuff.
I've heard of them.
The Family Online Safety Institute, that's another good one.
Okay.
And for teachers, there's ISD, the International Society for Technology and Education.
I'll have to check those out.
They have all kinds of resources for using tech in the classroom the right way.
That's great. So once parents and educators kind of have that basic understanding of AI,
Right.
what's the next step
Talk to your kids.
about AI?
Yeah, have open and honest conversations with them about technology.
Like what kinds of things?
Don't be afraid to talk about the bad stuff, too, the potential downsides.
Yeah, that's important.
Talk about balancing screen time with other activities, being careful about what they share online,
Right.
and making sure they understand that not everything they see online is true.
It's about teaching them to be critical thinkers.
Exactly. Help them develop that healthy skepticism,
Yeah.
Encourage them to ask questions and show them how to figure out if information is reliable, how to make good choices.
Those are skills they need for life, not just for dealing with technology.
Absolutely. And as they get older, get them involved in those bigger conversations.
Oh, you mean like the ethics of AI and all that?
Yeah, how AI might change jobs, how it might affect the economy, all that stuff. Help them understand the responsibility that comes with using powerful technology.
So we're not just raising a generation that's tech savvy, but also ethically aware.
That's the goal. And remember, it's okay if you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, you don't have to be perfect.
It's okay to say, I don't know, or even learn alongside your kids.
That's good advice.
The important thing is to create an environment where you can talk about these things openly, where you can think critically together.
A culture of lifelong learning.
That's it. The paper also brings up this really fascinating idea called dual representation.
Dual representation. I'm not familiar with that.
So dual representation is basically the ability to understand that a symbol,
Okay.
like a picture or a word,
Yeah.
can represent something real.
Oh, interesting.
And this is something that develops gradually in kids,
So how does that connect to AI?
Well, think about it. So much of how kids interact with technology is through symbols, right?
Right, they're always looking at screens, clicking on icons.
Exactly. But if they haven't fully developed this dual representation thing,
Yeah.
they might not connect those digital symbols to the real world.
So like if they see a picture of a dog on a tablet, they might not fully understand that it represents an actual dog.
Right. They might think of it as something totally separate.
That makes sense. So real-world experiences are still super important.
Oh, absolutely. Playing with real toys, exploring nature, interacting with people face to face.
I like good stuff.
It helps them build that foundation for understanding the world, both the real one and the digital one.
So it's all about balance again, making sure they have both those
Yeah.
digital and those analog experiences.
Exactly. And the paper, it actually challenges the people who are making AI to think about this dual representation stuff when they're designing things for kids.
So they can't just focus on making things flashy and fun. They have to make them meaningful too.
That's it. It's about recognizing that kids aren't just mini adults.
Right.
They learn differently.
And we need to respect that.
Exactly.
Right.
This whole discussion, it's really made me think about AI in a new way.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how this one research paper has sparked so many different ideas.
This really has.
Yeah.
And before we wrap things up, I wanted to touch on one more thing the paper talks about. This idea that AI could actually help kids develop things like empathy and social responsibility.
That sounds amazing, but is it realistic?
It's definitely ambitious, but I don't think it's impossible. The key is how we design and use these technologies.
So if we bake those values into AI from the start,
Exactly. If we prioritize empathy, collaboration, inclusion, all of that.
we can actually use AI to help kids develop those qualities along with their cognitive skills.
Precisely. Like, imagine an AI storytelling platform
Right.
that lets kids create stories from different perspectives.
Oh, that's cool.
Or maybe a virtual reality experience that puts them in someone else's shoes, helps them understand what it's like to live in a different culture.
So using AI to broaden their horizons,
Exactly. We can also design AI that models good behavior.
like being kind and fair.
Exactly. If kids are constantly interacting with AI that's demonstrating those values, they're more likely to pick them up themselves.
It's like giving them a digital role model.
That's a great way to put it. It shows how AI can be a force for good, not just in education, but in society as a whole.
It's a really inspiring vision. But realistically, what are some of the hurdles to actually making this happen?
Well, one of the biggest ones is making sure AI is accessible to all kids.
Right, not just the ones who have the latest gadgets and the fastest internet.
Exactly. We don't want to create a digital divide where only certain kids benefit from AI.
So it's about making sure AI levels the playing field, makes it worse.
Exactly. And that's going to take a lot of effort from policymakers, educators, tech companies, everyone.
It's a big challenge, but it's so important.
It really is. We're talking about shaping the future of childhood, which really means shaping the future of humanity.
And that's a powerful way to put it.
Mm.
So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
After all this, the thing that really sticks with me is this. AI has this incredible potential for learning, but it also has a huge influence on values. And the question for all of us is, what kind of future do we want to create? What role do we want AI to play in our kids' lives, in our grandkids' lives? Those are the questions we all need to be thinking about as we move forward.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
We're not just passive bystanders in this technological revolution. We have a choice in how this all plays out.
That's exactly right. The future isn't set in stone. It's something we build together.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive with a few key takeaways and some final thoughts to ponder. Stay with us.
Wow, so we've really covered a lot of ground here, haven't we?
We really have.
Right.
From personalized learning to the ethics of AI interacting with kids, even how AI might change the very definition of what it means to be a child.
Yeah, it's amazing to me just how much is packed into this one research paper.
It is. There's so much to unpack.
But before we let you go, let's kind of zoom out for a second.
What are the big key takeaways from all this that our listeners should really hold on to?
I think the thing that really stands out is just how fast everything's changing,
Yeah.
especially for kids growing up with all this AI around them.
It's not just about trying to keep up with the latest gadgets or apps anymore.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It's about understanding how this technology is really changing the way they experience the world.
How they learn, how they play, how they connect with other people, it's all shifting.
So it's not about being afraid of AI, but about being aware of it.
Yeah.
So we can actually have a say in how it shapes our lives
Yeah.
and the lives of future generations.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just understand the tech side of things either.
Right.
We have to think about the bigger picture, the social and economic impacts.
Yeah, like how will AI affect jobs in the future? How will it change the way we interact with each other?
Those are questions we can't ignore.
It feels like we're standing at the edge of something massive here, and we need to be asking those big, important questions about what kind of future we're building.
Absolutely. But amidst all this change, one thing I keep coming back to is the importance of human connection, that real-world interaction.
Yeah.
As AI gets more and more advanced, I think we need to be even more intentional about making sure kids are having those face-to-face conversations,
Right.
encouraging them to be creative, to play freely, to explore the world around them without a screen in front of them.
Because as you said earlier, technology should complement our lives,
Yeah.
not replace those essential human connections.
Exactly. And the last thing I'll say is we're all in this together.
That's right.
Parents, teachers, policymakers, researchers, tech developers, we all have a responsibility to make sure AI is used ethically and that it benefits all children.
This research paper really is a powerful call to action, urging us to step up and be a part of shaping this future.
It really is. So, to wrap things up, I want to leave everyone with this one final thought. Imagine a world where AI doesn't just teach kids facts and figures, but it actually helps them become more empathetic, more creative, more socially responsible.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is. The question is, what can each of us do to make that vision a reality? What choices can we make today that will help guide AI towards becoming a force for good in the lives of children for generations to come?
It's a powerful question, and one that I hope our listeners will continue to think about long after this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey exploring AI and child development. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.